I've never done a video before like this, and I'm gonna try and keep it short because this is something I could talk about for hours if I could. I wanted to make it because I've seen a lot of different mentalities about this problem. This is one of the biggest, if not the biggest problem that we are facing, and I don't like to compare. It's not really good to compare. This problem is more important than this one, but we can't really deny it. Some of these mentalities are mentalities slash myths are like the reason that this problem isn't being addressed the way it should. And it's not just mentalities of the public, it's also mainly mentalities within governments, businesses, everyone else. Quick disclaimer, there's a lot of people more educated than me, and I don't have all the statistics, and there's a lot that I don't know. But I just wanted to make this ASAP or something because it's very frustrating. These mentalities are the holding people back. When you consider the scale of the issue, it's just frustrating. No matter how educated you are, you want to do something about it anyway. Second thing is that I'm not perfect, and because of the nature of this issue I'm going to talk about, it's very easy, and you get a lot of people pointing fingers and criticizing and saying, yeah, but you blah blah blah. But like, yeah, it's not about that. Like, we're all doing the best we can, and well, hopefully, and it's not productive to do that. Also, in this world is pretty much impossible. It is impossible to be perfect environmentally, the way it's set up. So yeah, that's my disclaimer. Not perfect, and I don't know everything, but I know a little bit. I like to think I know a little bit. So these mentalities are going to be in order. Roughly, like, it's just based on my experience in order of like what I feel like I've seen most. The first one, most important, is people who may not know about it, like actually know what it is, or like the science, or yeah, which isn't me like bashing them and being like, why don't you know about this? I know about this. But it's like time now where we need to make sure we do know what's going on. The basic science is, for anyone who doesn't know, there's these things called greenhouse gases, and they are, you probably heard of the ozone layer. So that's naturally got greenhouse gases in. They trap some of the sun's energy in the earth so that the climate is livable and it's not freezing and it's not boiling. So they trap the right amount. So the greenhouse effect, this is what it's called, is natural. The actual greenhouse effect is natural, and it happens because of things like volcanoes. But there's a natural like composition of gases that are meant to be in the atmosphere. But because of us, and because of, yeah, let me not overcomplicate yet. Because of us, things like deforestation for animal agriculture, which is the #1 cause of deforestation. Deforestation for growing plants to make certain things like palm oil, whatever, vegetable oils and stuff, and even more importantly, the burning of fossil fuels for energy, basically, and a lot of other things. Also, the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world, which a lot of people don't know. But yeah, so things like this basically release more greenhouse gases, and mainly carbon dioxide basically creates this thing called the enhanced greenhouse effect. So it's basically enhancing it, so it's not natural anymore, and because of that, more solar energy is trapped, and this leads to global warming. So basically, more solar energy is trapped, the global average temperature gradually starts to go up. Global warming causes a lot of things. So causes sea levels to rise because ice is melting, first of all, in North and South Pole, and also when water heats up, it expands. Obviously the sea basically does that. many causes less like more unpredictable weather. Hurricanes and heat waves, droughts and whatever become more often and become worse and harder to predict. Might make a separate video like really talking about the impacts of all of this, because there's a lot that people don't know about. The weather patterns thing is the thing we've seen most. For example, the wildfires in Australia, and so many things. Flooding in Indonesia, flooding in Yemen. A lot of the recent hurricanes in like the Caribbean and the US have been like some of the worst ones ever. And it's not even necessarily causing these things, it's just making them worse, making them more often. 20 or 30 companies, I can't remember, 20 or 30 companies basically produce a third of global emissions, which is greenhouse gases. So that's mainly for like fossil fuel industry, mining and like for energy. This is all very rooted in colonialism, so that created the culture in the first place of taking what you need from a place and taking what you need from nature and people and just exploiting it just for profit. So that's the principle that it created, the whole like culture, the whole thing. But capitalism is the reason for this. People say people are the disease, or humans are the disease. Capitalism is the disease, because it's putting profit over people, over nature, everything, for a very small amount of people to actually benefit from it. Greed, because these industries, because they're so hungry for money and hungry for power, and they do have a lot of money and power, they will cut any corners to make as much profit as they can. So that's why a lot of fashion companies pay their employees like 1 pence per hour, and they cut all these environmental corners. That's why they're so socially and environmentally degrading, because the less responsible you are as a company, the less money you spend. Out of all of this whole system, the people who are most affected are the people at the bottom. So the people who have less money are not the ones causing the problem, because the people causing the problem are the rich people. In the last however many years, I would say like post-industrial revolution, there's consumer culture, like culture of consumerism, culture of greed, culture of like convenience. This is where the public does come into this problem. So in simple words, it's basically similar to these businesses who cut all the corners. We cut corners because we want the most convenient option, or you know, so and almost always the most convenient option is the least sustainable option. So for example, the meal deals where you end up throwing out a bunch of plastic, or the dresses for £5, you know, because it's more convenient for us and it's cheaper, but it's worse for the environment. Basically consumerism, where we always need new stuff. We see each other's worth in how much stuff you have, and we feel the need to like accumulate stuff. If I was to summarize it in 10 minutes, that's what it's all about, really. It's a social justice problem because it's created by the richest people, benefits the richest people, puts everyone else at risk, their lives at risk, and the planet's life at risk. It's crazy when you really think about it. But yeah, so that's the first one. The second one is one that frustrates me a lot, and it's like, oh, it's just a bunch of hippies who like to block the road, or like, oh, there's those vegans again, you know, which I've heard a lot of, like in other words, but it's this whole kind of stigma that surrounds people that care about the environment, which I will never understand, because to me it's like, why is it so weird? Like, I literally don't want the whole human race to die. That's all it is. And I don't know, I can't get my head around what's so weird about caring about where you live and like all those mountains and blue oceans that you post on Instagram, like those are the same ones I'm talking about. So I don't, yeah, I'll never understand really why it's considered so strange by a lot of people, but it's even subconsciously, I think, a lot of people hear people talking about like people protesting or people going vegan or whatever, and they think, oh, it's just a bunch of like hipsters. And I'm sure there are hipsters, you know? I mean, I know there are, but like however you define that, or hippies, or however you define that. But when you look at the bigger picture, it's just people who care about where we live, and it's like, why don't we all care about where we live? It's not even where we live, it's not even my street, it's the whole planet. It's much bigger because, like I said, it's a social justice problem. If you care about people in any way, then it's relevant because, like I said, the most marginalised people, the most poor people, the ones who haven't caused any of this are the ones feeling it. It's not just save the turtles, it's not just ban plastic straws, it's like much, much bigger. And also, tying into this, a lot of the reason for this stigma is because a lot of like action groups, for example Extinction Rebellion, that care about this stuff are doing things that are could be seen as annoying. So they are blocking roads, they are whatever, banging drums, they are disrupting people's journey to work or whatever. But when you sit and think about it, there is a reason for that. Like, scientists have known about this problem for over 50 years, probably 60, 70 years. They've been telling everyone this is what's happening. And when people still aren't listening, and this is the decade where we need to turn it around or we're all gonna die, which is crazy. It's like the problem is a lot bigger than just blocking a road. It's like when people get annoyed, I just feel like saying, I completely understand why it's annoying, but I feel like saying, what's the other option? Like, what do you suggest? To actually get your voice heard, you do have to be disruptive. And when you look at all change in the past that's achieved something, people have been being disruptive and being inconvenient, because it's basically like shouting at the government, slapping the government in the face, slapping these businesses in the face, because you have to be heard and you have to be seen. And it also does raise awareness. It makes people know who you are. Whether that's in a good way or not is a different subject. Okay, the third one I have written down, which is also extremely common and actually probably should have come before the one I just said, is I'm just going to bury my head in the sand, because it is easier to not think about it than think about it, especially when it can easily feel hopeless. So I'm well aware that we're screwed, but I'm going to pretend it's not happening. There's an obvious reason why we shouldn't do that, because it's not going away, and it's getting worse the longer it's not addressed properly by governments and businesses and the public, the worse it's going to get. Again, I don't have the specific science for you, but there's plenty of graphs out there which show that this is the decade, if not the year, 2020, that it needs to turn around. One thing I didn't mention in this background science bit, so all these impacts, all the rise in temperatures, they cause things called positive multiplier effects, or tipping points. If anyone is watching this who did geography, you'll know what I mean. The more the problem happens, the faster the impacts get. It's hard to explain. It's actually hard to explain. It's basically like there's a point where the problem is so big and it's sped up so beyond our prediction that it's irreversible. There's no going back. So it's like, even if in 50 years we were like, oh, let's go completely backwards now, let's try and reverse it all, not possible. It won't be possible. So scientifically there is a point where it's the last time you can do something about it, and this decade is the one. We're past the point of pretending it doesn't exist. We were doing that 50 years ago. This whole issue is like the biggest example of human procrastination we've ever seen, and it's understandable because it's so hard to get your head around the existence of the whole planet is in danger. it's not something we've seen before. This is the time when we need to do something. The fourth one I have is the people who say, I don't really care, it's not really affecting us, it's not really gonna affect us, it's not affecting me, it's not really my problem. To an extent, that's true at the moment. We've had impacts of it, so this winter was the wettest winter ever. So it is affecting us, and I think we're getting hotter summers, so it is affecting us, but I understand that on a daily basis our lives aren't at risk because of this. It's just the wrong approach to be like, it's not my problem. Yeah, we just can't be like that. We have to, even if something's not affecting us, it's just selfish. But the thing is, it's human nature to an extent to, when things don't directly emotionally impact you, to not really feel anything about it. It's frustrating that these small reasons are making people close their eyes, when in reality it's gonna affect us all sooner or later. The thing I learned about in geography, a term called teleconnections, which is basically it's to do with the weather and the climate. So like changes in the climate in one part of the world will affect somewhere like the weather the other side of the world, basically, because it's all a connected system. So who's to say it won't affect us tomorrow? Nothing. And I mean, there's a lot of predictions of ways that it will affect the UK, but I do to an extent understand. But that is very frustrating, especially when people just don't care. That is very frustrating. But yes, so that's that one. The next one I have is, blows my mind a bit actually. It's people who say global warming's natural, people who say climate change is natural, / people who say it's not real. I'm not going to address the people who say it's not real, because like, yeah, the people who say it's a natural process, and it's very common for them to liken it to things like the Ice Age. So first of all, there's a very strong correlation between CO2 levels, the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere caused by us, because they've increased because of us, which we know already, and global temperatures. So that tells you that we're doing it. That's that evidence that it's caused by us. And if it's caused by us, how is it a natural process? Number one, the geological period that we're in is called the Anthropocene. We were in the Holocene, now we're in the Anthropocene, which means derived from the word humans. So that says it all, really. It's caused by us, so how can it be natural? Yeah, it's not really comparable at all. And also another thing is that, why are people so reluctant to trust scientists? I'm much more likely to trust a scientist who's been saying this for 50 years, who's got plenty of research papers, who's not had anyone disagree. Like 1% of scientists in the world disagree, and that's mad. But like, I'm much more likely to trust them over someone on the internet telling me climate change is a hoax. Like, no, I haven't gone out and done my own research, but these are scientists, these are the experts. They don't have anything, there's nothing in it for them to lie about this whole, yeah, anyway. Also, the timescale of the Ice Age was much longer than this. This change I'm talking about is since the Industrial Revolution. So, another common mentality, a lot of people will say, there's no point because there's nothing we can do. Things have been achieved already, so the Heathrow, just in the UK, I have no idea about other countries, but just in the UK. So first of all, the Paris Agreement in 2015 got almost all countries, bar like 3, to agree to these targets that basically help the environment in short form. And also, like, the Heathrow expansion was just deemed legal because of the Paris Agreement, which it is completely legal. And Bristol Airport was just been announced that they're not going to expand that one either, when they were planning to. So there's probably loads of other examples as well, but these are just the ones that come to my mind first. And those are very recent as well, so I'm sure there's other things before that, but it's quite pessimistic. Change has already been achieved. Like, the only reason it's been achieved is because of campaigning, people who care about this issue. And also, we shouldn't underestimate how much power we have in as consumers, for one, because when you think about it, everything that happens in the world, every industry, every business is for us, to put it very simply. That's a generalization, I know, but the oil industry is for the people who use oil. The meat industry is for the people who eat meat. So alongside that, we have power in numbers. There's 7 billion of us. So can you even imagine if 1 million or 500,000 people stopped eating meat for a week or a day? That would have a massive impact on the industry. Now, I know that's not going to happen, but it's just to show we have so much power just because of how many of us there are, and also because we're the people that they're doing it for. The third thing is that when you look at any change that's been achieved in the past, so the civil rights movement, the women's rights, anything, like, think to yourself, how were they achieved? They were achieved in the exact way that we're trying to achieve justice for this problem. People campaigning, people being angry, people being disruptive and persevering, and like, at the time, I'm sure many people were like, this is impossible, this is never going to happen. No, it's very easy to lose hope. I struggle with that like quite a lot sometimes, because there's so many people who don't care, and there's so many people much more powerful than the average person who doesn't care. But realistically, what is being pessimistic gonna do? Like, if we channel that energy into being angry, and that angry energy into trying to get people's attention and put pressure on governments and businesses, that's a much more productive way to use it. We have to be grateful because I live in the UK. We have freedom of speech. We're not going to get killed if we go out and protest. We have the ability to fight for what we care about. Whether we get heard is a different issue, but we have the ability. I mean, we have been heard already in many ways, like I just mentioned, but we have the ability to just say what we care about and speak out against things. When you realise that fully, you become more hopeful. Another thing I've seen a lot of people saying is, like, isn't most of the world's pollution caused by like China and India anyway? Like, it's not our problem, why should we have to deal with it? That is kind of false. When you look at the rankings, I'm sure they differ between sources, but so China is at the top. That's partly because of its massive population. USA is second, and India's like fourth. A lot of the activity that's going on in this part of the world is for the USA and the Western world. Is for the consumers that are here. So the factories that are making items for flipping Pretty Little Thing and Topshop and Gucci it's the people over here, generalization again, but it's the people over here that it's for, and the mining for the precious metals, toxic metals for the iPhones that are then sold here, you name it, like the factories that manufacture the toys that say made in China that then are sold here. They're sold there as well, of course, but the whole thing of westernization and Americanization is also consumerism. And so that's what, even if China's number one, that's what it's feeding. So we are responsible. And also a lot of these factories are actually ours. So like, we've outsourced these factories to these countries because they're cheaper and we don't have to care about the planet, we don't have to care about people. So these factories are actually ours, number one. We also export a lot of our waste to these countries. So when you actually sit and think about it, that's a bit of a ridiculous argument. I think it's it's clearly just a defense mechanism. I think it's, again, human nature to an extent to like blame someone else for something, especially something this big and this hard to get your head around. And also, even if it was China and India, where is that going to get us? Just like being pessimistic, where is blaming other people going to get us? If you really care about the problem, it doesn't matter who caused it. Let's come across a statistic that will help explain my point. Per capita, per person, China is 12th for emissions. So that really just puts it into perspective. I thought I'd just chuck that in. Even if it was them, it doesn't justify anything that we're doing. The last one I have to talk about is people who don't really pay attention to it because my lifestyle isn't that bad. I don't think my lifestyle is that bad environmentally, like personally. First of all, that might be wrong in the first place because there's a lot that it's not just about how much plastic you use, it's not just about how much meat you eat, it's also whether you're buying imported fruit and veg, it's also where you're buying your clothes from, how much you're buying your clothes, like where they're made, what materials, like are they cotton, are they polyester. There's a lot of things that go into your carbon footprint. So number one, to say that is quite hard. And number two, not just about lifestyle change. So this introduces the argument of system change versus lifestyle change. I used to say that there's 7 billion of us. If we all just try and live a bit more sustainably, then this problem will be fixed and solved, and that's the solution. If we all just try and live a bit more sustainably. I've recently realised that is not the solution at all. It's an interaction of governments, businesses and the public, but we can't just focus on our lifestyle because it's a much bigger problem than that, and we don't have the time for that. So it's very important. Like, I've really tried with my lifestyle, like again, I'm not perfect of course, but like try and buy secondhand, try and buy less, try and buy as little plastic as you can, try and drive as little as you can, but I can't drive, but anyway. It is important, don't get me wrong, and it can also send a message. If you're really trying with your lifestyle and you're committed to changing your lifestyle and sacrificing convenience, it can send a message to people in your life who may not feel how you do about this issue. That's one of the things that keeps me hopeful, because it's like, even if I'm making the tiniest impact, hopefully I'm inspiring somebody else and making them think, oh, maybe this is kind of important. And also you do have an impact. You're one of 7 billion, but there are so many people thinking the same thing as you, thinking I'm 1 in 7 billion. That adds up. It's not just one person. So lifestyle is without a doubt important, but given the time we have and how fast the situation is escalating, we don't have time for the solution to just be buy less plastic and buy less palm oil and hope other people will, like, don't have time for that. It's a very urgent situation. It needs a combination, but mainly system change. I don't feel qualified to give concrete solutions to anyone, and it's hard to think of what the solutions are. It's getting easier, but it's hard at the moment. But it's also hard to make a video like this, which is potentially depressing, and not give some kind of hopes. First of all, if you don't care, please start caring, because it's going to affect everybody, whether you like it or not, and very soon. And it's not something where when it happens we can be like, oh shit, let me try and reverse. No, it's not. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Something you can do that is very productive, first of all, is to try and educate yourself on the issue. The more you learn, the more you can help teach other people, and hopefully the more angry you get, the more you learn other solutions, really. Ways to do this is documentaries. So many documentaries. There's one called Climate Change: The Facts by David Attenborough for a little education. There's one called The True Cost about fashion, which is so important because so many people don't know about the impact of the fashion industry. Like, everyone knows about plastic, everyone knows, but a lot of people don't know about this. There's also a book which I've put down somewhere. Started reading this recently, The Future We Choose. I have no idea if that's backwards or not. And this is not an ad. But it sets out two possibilities. The world we're heading for and the world we could have if we got our act together. So it really sets the scene and it makes it feel more real. That one's less good for education. It's good for motivation, really. I think social media is really good for this is the only reason I'm still on social media, to be honest, because I've found lots of like-minded people that think in the same way as me. And it's very inspiring and very motivational. And also I've learnt a lot as well. So one is Michaela Loach. She's taught me a lot. Like I said, the lifestyle is important, and people are also much more willing to listen to you if you're actually practicing what you preach. Like, again, none of us can be perfect, and don't think you can't get involved in other, like, activism and other stuff because you're not perfect. Like I said, it can inspire other people. There's people who have said that, like, something I posted, it has actually impacted them in a way. If you have any, like, action groups in your area, and I'm sure you do, there's actually a lot of Extinction Rebellion groups. Join any if you can. And I know Extinction Rebellion has a few flaws, and believe me, they know it as well. They're a very new organisation. We need to start addressing the higher up people about this, really. I mean, they're part of the reason that the airport expansions were deemed illegal. I am still in that stage where I'm now learning how to make an impact beyond metal straws and beyond, like, secondhand buying and stuff. My, like, fourth tip is, like, be angry about it. Like, after you've educated yourself, be angry and let your anger take you where it wants to take you. Don't give a shit what you look like and what people will say, because, like, when you think of the issue, it doesn't really matter. It's not really relevant, people's opinions or anything else. Anger can go in two ways. So it can make you hopeless, depressed, or it can make you proactive and, like, passionate. And that is the way that we should try and direct our energy. I know that's a very vague statement, like, let your anger take over. There will be a time where I can speak more on that, but right now it's do whatever you can, really. Write to people, boycott things, but also actively write to people, get out on the streets in the protest, join the like, meetings for Extinction Rebellion. And when you're truly angry and you completely stop giving a shit what about anything else, about what people think or anything, you realise there's a lot that can be done and a lot of impact you can have. I've never done an outro before. Please check the description. I probably left out a lot of information that I'll think I should have said this. Please feel free to ask me, like, if you have any questions, or if you have just anything to discuss or any questions. Don't be, like, a dick about it, obviously, but like, I'm literally happy to talk about anything. It's one of the things that helps you stay hopeful, knowing that you're helping to educate people, and knowing that you're inspiring people, knowing that you're motivating people. So yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe.